Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Harriet Applegate, Executive Secretary of the North Shore AFL-CIO and a board member of the City Club. And I want to give a disclaimer. Usually these introductions are a little bit more dispassionate than the one I'm about to give, so it's on me, not the City Club. Okay, these are challenging times for the labor movement. A movement that 60 years ago represented 1 in 3 workers, but today, in the private sector at least, represents 1 in 16 workers. Declining numbers and power due to globalization, free trade, and other factors have had a debilitating effect on the movement. In struggling to maintain itself and its members, it has been challenging for union leaders to remain true to their values, much less keep the undaunted fighting spirit that propelled the movement to success in the first place. When one is on the defensive, it is so much easier to cling to the status quo, hold on to what you've got, and forget making bold moves and striking out in new directions, even when the need to do so is exactly what is called for. This understandable clinging to the status quo in the face of change amounts to a double whammy for a movement which requires dynamism to survive and robs it of its ability to inspire, to attract big thinkers, and a new generation to its ranks. So when we encounter a labor leader who doesn't shrink from change, but actively engages not only personally, but brings along his entire membership, it is truly significant. And when such a leader comes from an industry and represents a workforce that has benefited greatly from the status quo and faces an uncertain but potentially nowhere near as good future, it is nothing short of amazing, historic even. Such a leader is Mike Langford. He sees the big picture. He sees the inevitability of the changes in the energy industry. Does he deny them, minimize or avoid them, sugarcoat them, and just hope they don't occur on his watch? Absolutely not. He sees them as opportunities to prepare his members for the transition, to fight for retraining, to make sure his union is at the table, to do whatever has to be done to assure his members' success going into that uncharted future. And all this with a view to what is good for consumers and for our communities as well. That, my friends, is leadership. Mike Langford does not just give a good speech like the one you were about to hear. He harnesses his vision to develop workable approaches to meet the energy needs of the future, as well as the needs of his members for sustainable jobs and the larger community for safe, clean energy. And he brings his membership right along with him. One last word before I formally introduce him. No one in America today has such a difficult and delicate balance to strike. On the one hand, most of his members make a living from the fossil fuel industry or from forms of energy that can pose health or environmental risks. On the other, climate change is forcing us to develop more sustainable energy sources such as solar, wind, hydro, and others, and that is not where his members are. I think you will be impressed with how the president of the Utility Workers Union of America resolves this seeming contradiction and how he approaches this, the most challenging issue of our current era. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Mike Langford.
Well, thank you, Harriet. I tell you, I hope I can live up to all this great introduction here. And first off, I'm really honored to be here. Number one, I didn't realize all the different speakers that you've had here over time. And Dan comes up to me just 30 seconds ago and says, oh, by the way, don't let it bother you that Teddy Roosevelt spoke up here too, So, oh, okay, yeah, no big deal. I got you. Got it covered. But hey, again, it's really an honor to be here. And what I'm going to speak about here today, it impacts every single one of us in the way we live. It's the engine that drives our economy. if you think about it. It's the lifeline for our communities and where we live. Energy, infrastructure. Let me just tell you a little bit about the women and the men of the Utility Workers Union of America. These folks, and I throw out the word first responder, and I don't throw that out lightly. These folks are really your first responders in times of need, if you think about it. If there's an earthquake, if there's a hurricane, an ice storm, a tornado, a major fire, a flooding, it doesn't matter what it is. Who are the first people to go into those houses or to those communities and cut the power, cut the water, cut the gas? Who stays there, rebuilds that through the most adverse, worst conditions? But the women and men that make up the Utility Workers Union of America. And I'm very, very proud of what they do and the high skills that they all have. And everybody in this room ought to thank a utility worker every day when you turn that light switch on, when you turn that heat up, and you turn that water on, and you're getting safe, reliable, clean products that we all work on. So here's to the Utility Workers Union of America. My brothers and sisters. Bear with me here because I'm going to talk about all three aspects. I mentioned electric, I mentioned gas, and I mentioned water. Okay? I want to start out a little bit with electric. One of the things that really got us engaged with infrastructure and the whole rebuilding of America's infrastructure, and we just came off of a convention, we being the utility workers, and it's called, our theme was Reclaim, Retrain, Repower, and Rebuild America. And if you really think about what those terms mean, and when you hear what I have to say here today, hopefully they'll all connect the dots for you. Hurricane Sandy came through and did a lot of damage, didn't it? Really showed us how vulnerable that the utility industry really is. Power lines were blown down, substations were flooded, gas lines were ripped out of the ground due to the trees falling over, water lines ripped out of the ground. It was a disaster for not only a couple days, but a disaster for months and months. It took a lot to recover. So climate and weather really shows you how vulnerable the utilities can be. Let me ask you all a question. Who invented the light bulb? Anybody know? Edison? Good. That's good. Who invented the transmission and distribution system? No, it was Edison. Thomas Edison, because he had to get electric to that bulb, right? If we brought Thomas Edison in this room here today, he'd look around, he'd think, wow, LED lighting, well, that's pretty cool. Look at one of these things, oh man, that's pretty cool too, you know? Wow, that's pretty neat. If we took him out in our transmission distribution system, he'd go, wow, ain't nothing changed, you know? Ain't nothing changed, wow, all this time, yeah? And you know, that's not only with electric, it's with gas and it's with water. When you really think about this, a lot of this stuff was put in the ground, put in the air, put in people's homes over 100 years ago. And now we're paying a price. We're paying a dear price. If you look at electric, I keep going back to that and what Superstorm Sandy did and the vulnerabilities that are out there to our grid. You think about our grid system. You know, we're trying to put more renewables into it, and that's good. But we have to expand the grid to do that because a lot of times the renewables, they're not right next door. They may not be in Akron or Columbus or Cleveland. They may be out west or something. So you have to build additional transmission lines. You think that's an easy thing to do? Who wants a transmission line in their backyard? Anybody in here? Let me see you raise your hand if you want a transmission line. Yeah, so that's one of the issues that we're faced with out there. That it's not an easy task to just go out and say, oh, we're going to make the grid smarter, and we're going to make it bigger, and we're going to make it better. Well, that's a good concept, good idea, but it takes a lot to do that. Let me give you some examples of the grid and what we're faced with. And like I said, not only is climate really has an impact on our electrical system and all of our system, gas and water. But you have actual cyber issues with computers and cyber attack. And not only that, but you have actually physical attack. Did any of you hear about out in California? Last April it was, San Jose, California. An individual took out a substation. Kind of shut down a lot of Silicon Valley there. Shows you how vulnerable that grid system is and how easily, I mean really, because substations are usually unmanned places where there's a bunch of transformers. Transformers increase the power or decrease electrical power. And somebody shot out a lot of the insulators and caused the transformer to go down. FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, did a study. And they said that an attack on our transmission system, around 9 key substations, could shut this country down for weeks, if not months. 9 substations. That's pretty scary when you think about it. That's real scary. And I'm talking about transformers. Any of you, do you know what a transformer is? Have any of you ever seen a transformers? They're these great big, heavy metal inside them, or copper wires and oil, and just they're a huge, huge piece of equipment. Well, one of those goes down, or one gets blown up, or one gets attacked. It's not like you go to the local grocery store or the local hardware store and say, hey, I need a new transformer. Don't work that way. Let me give you an example. First Energy. We got any First Energy folks in the room? They may remember this. A couple years ago, 2012, First Energy put a new transformer down in Pennsylvania. Well, they bought that transformer from Korea because there's only one transformer manufacturer of 765,000 volt in this country, and that's in Tennessee, Mitsubishi. So we're limited, number one, on who has what, okay? So they ordered this transformer. It took a year to build. Took them 28 days to ship it by ship, okay? Come across the ocean, brought it into New Jersey, put it on a train, brought it down to Pennsylvania, then they had to put it on a truck. And this truck could go about 1 mile an hour because they had to have about 100 axles under this thing to move it, because this thing weighs about 800,000 pounds. You know, it's not like you get a couple people and you lift it off the truck or a high-low, right? You know, it's a pretty substantial piece of equipment. But saying all that, it shows you the vulnerability of this system. And I'm telling you these things because I think people really need to understand it takes a lot to get that switch to come on, or when you turn that switch on for these lights to come on, and all the intricacies in between. But our whole infrastructure with gas, electric, and water is rated anywhere from water a D-, gas a D, and electricity around a D+. So, you know, talking about that transformer, it took from time to purchase to time to install, took a 2-year trip. So if 9 of them were destroyed or under attack, and it's not like one size fits all either, okay? And you know, we have strategic oil fields, right? Shouldn't we have a strategic transformer field out there? And EEI has tried to do that. That's the Edison Electric Institute. But no offense to any of my utility family in here, brothers and sisters, some of the managers, they don't like to share from one to another now. You all got to admit that, right? You know, that's not a bad thing because they need that equipment. They buy it for a reason. For when theirs goes down, they have a backup to do it. So it's not like you have stockpiles and stockpiles of this stuff, okay? So that's enough a little bit about that technical aspect, but you know, the vulnerabilities that are there. Let me give you another example on the electric side. Our highest voltage line, 765 volts, 165,000 volts, okay? Sounds like a lot, don't it? Pretty big. China has created a 1 million kV line. When they transport power over that 1 million volt line for 1,200 miles, what do you think their voltage drop is? Anybody got any idea? Anybody, throw a number out there. What do you think that voltage drop would be? How much? 700,000. They get about a 5 or 6% drop in voltage, okay? our 765 over that same span, what do you think our voltage drop is? 20%. Wish I could say 20%. It's 80%. 80%. So there's technology out there and stuff. And the reason I bring these things up, we talk about renewables. We talk about what can we do. We talk a lot about carbon. Just think if we instituted some of these new technologies and we didn't have an 80% line loss at times and voltage like that drop, what would that do? That'd be less energy we had to produce, number one, right? Doesn't that help green up the economy? Doesn't that help with all the things that we're talking about when it comes to renewables? Natural gas. Most of you have natural gas in this room? Turn your heat on, heat your homes, cook with it. Methane is an issue that we have to deal with. You will not deal with climate change unless you deal with methane too. By just addressing carbon alone, carbon dioxide, methane is like 60 times worse than what CO2 is, okay? But we have leaks, leaky valves, pipes in the ground, leaky stations, broken pipes, wooden pipes in the ground that leak enough fuel, unaccounted for gas, methane, that you could heat probably 4 million homes with. You could take a couple 100,000 automobiles off the road. Just by fixing these pipes and doing it in a timelier fashion, you could put 300,000 people to work in that industry alone, just fixing gas line pipes. It's a pretty big number if you really think about it. We talk about what we can do to help green up the environment. If we looked at expanding our grid, modernizing our grid, you know, we don't have to make up jobs. Our industry, in the next 20 years, can put 1.5 million new people in the workforce. Our workforce today, most of them have hair either the color of mine or no hair at all. You know, that's just the nature of it. A lot of hiring was done in the late 70s, early 80s. Then, total stop of hiring. There's a world of knowledge going to be walking out these doors. A wealth of knowledge, I should say. And this stuff just don't happen overnight. You know, we have to train people. It's highly skilled jobs, good paying jobs. People who buy homes, people who buy cars, people who pay taxes. Hey, what a novel thing, huh? You know, if you think about it, really, think about it, you know? Those are good jobs, and folks, we're squandering opportunities here. We're not doing things that we could do to modernize these systems and putting the money back in. They predicted that we could spend $100 billion a year for the next 10 years in electric alone. $100 billion. And the gas pipeline infrastructure, I know Dominion is doing what they can. They've invested $160 million last year in 2015. Their goal is to do 5,500 miles of pipeline replacement. They've just reached over 1,000 miles of that pipeline. That's putting people back to work. That's putting back into the community. You think about the community we live in here. We all live in diverse communities. What not better? Let's not create new stuff. Let's just fix what we've got to help green up this economy. Let's talk about water a little bit here. Water important to anybody in this room? It is to me. It is to people in Flint. You know, you heard me talk about wooden water lines. I bet you the people in Flint wish they still had some of those wooden water lines. Because, folks, this infrastructure in water is over 100 years old, too. We lose 7 billion gallons of water a day through leaky water pipes. Do you know how much electricity it takes to make fresh drinking water? It takes a lot. It's energy intensive. Think about that. Think about if we didn't flush 7 million down the drain every day, what we could do. California would like us to divert it their way, I'm assuming, right? But these are things, to me, that just seems too simple. We know about them. A lot of people don't know about them. That's why I really thank the opportunity to speak here today, because back in 2013, utility workers committed, along with the Blue-Green Alliance and its partners, that we would take on this whole infrastructure campaign across America, to educate policymakers, the communities, the public, on the importance of what we're talking about here. You know, again, climate issues are real. You know, this is probably the only country out there that we have all these politicians that will deny the science. But come February 1st or 2nd, they'll listen to a groundhog telling them that day you're going to have 6 more weeks of winter, right? Makes you scratch your head and think, wow, you know, this is a bizarro world, you know? But hey, those are the things that we have to deal with, you know? And I go back to the water, though. I know I'm skipping around here a lot, but that water, losing 7 billion gallons a day, and what we could do and how many people we could put back to work, and how much greening up of the economy we could actually do by putting people to work. You heard me on the electric side, and the energy, $1.5 million over the next 20 years. You know, we're talking hundreds of thousands in the gas side. We're talking hundreds of thousands in the water side. And all their employees are aging. These are high-skilled, good jobs, utility workers. We're looking at the worker of the future. We're not looking in the past. We're looking at what does that future worker really need skills? What are they needed? You know, more math skills, because as you bring on different types of energy, there's going to be more distributed energy in this country. It's going to continue. Excuse me. We want to be ahead of the curve, because it usually takes anywhere a minimum of 4 years to train people in these jobs to be proficient. And it takes continuous education. We're firm believers of continuous education in our fields. One of the good things on the gas side, we have been able to make some headway in different states. Out in California, San Bruno, anybody hear about San Bruno? Pipeline explosion killed 8 people. We put safety first on our agenda. We had legislation passed there last year to actually, we sponsored it, Blue Green worked with us, Leno, a congressman out in California, sponsored it also. We got it passed to where they expedite gas line replacement and the actual leaking. See, you could actually allow a leaky gas pipe to vent into the air, or a valve, for years. There's some that has been leaking for 3 decades. Remember, methane 60 times worse than carbon dioxide. It's pretty substantial. So, you know, I'm telling you all these things because I think people need to realize what's at stake out there, and that we really need to think about, how do we finance these? How many people in this room, probably everybody to a degree is guilty, you probably pay anywhere from $150, $250 a month for 1,000 TV channels that you may watch 2 or 3 or a half a dozen channels. But boy, when it comes to providing safe power, clean water, and gas, oh, don't charge me another nickel on that now, damn it, you know? But think about, if we really looked at putting a minimal price tag on the necessities of life, you know, we could probably do without the Disney Channel for a week or two, don't you think? You know, I don't know about the History Channel, but the Disney anyway, you know? Nothing against Disney, okay? But, see, these are the things that we need to think about. As we converge and move into a different direction with renewables and coal plants, they play a big role in this country. This community here, they shut 3 coal plants down along the lake. You know, what has happened to those communities? We have to have a transition. We have to figure out ways, if you're going to bring in new types of energy, then how do we transition workers from the old to the new? Let's put a plan in place to make that a real. We can't just talk about it. We have to actually make that happen. We have to do that. What happens to that community who's relied upon that tax base for firemen and police and school teachers and librarians and everything else and all the other necessities? We have to have alternatives. We just can't rush to things and say we're going to abandon this and go at 100% to that without really thinking it through. Nuclear plays a big role. But nuclear baseload is under very tough, very tough. Natural gas prices with fracking, all the new natural gas coming in. But if we put all of our eggs in one basket, what's going to happen? Think about that. The Northeast, during the polar vortex, a lot of natural gas. They couldn't supply the gas up there. There's not enough capacity in the ground to get the gas to the Northeast. So they had to shut factories down. They had to shut paper mills down, okay? There are certain power plants in states during that polar vortex that run off fuel oil, but they couldn't start them up because it takes natural gas to start them. They're big 500 megawatt power plants. If they would have started up with natural gas, they couldn't have heated their homes, the people. So the capacity in the ground for gas, we can talk about building all these new gas plants, but damn it, if we don't have the capacity to move it from point A to point B, what good is it? So see, all these things come into play, and a lot of people make a lot of decisions that don't know what the hell they're talking about. And it has a big impact that we have to pay the price for years to come. Flint water. I hate to bring up something sensitive like that because it's devastating to that community, the people in Flint. But here you had politicians make a change to a water system that in turn corroded the pipes, and these people have been poisoned for a year now. And how do you fix that? How do you stop? Would anybody stop in Flint, Michigan to a restaurant as you're driving through? Or stop and wash your hands at a gas station even? Probably not. So it's going to take a tremendous amount of work and effort to turn that community around in a whole new infrastructure rebuild. So folks, what can we do about all this stuff? I think that we need to make sure that Republican, Democrat, regardless of what you are, you need to put pressure on these people to say, hey, look, this is something that impacts all of us. These three elements, gas, electric, and water, impacts us in our way we live and what we can produce in this country. We need you to step up to the plate to work with all parties involved to create an energy policy in this country and in these states that is beneficial to our communities, to our businesses, and to the people that we work with day in and day out. Don't you think that that's a common sense approach to things? I mean, it just seems too simple, don't it? And I don't mean to be Pollyannish up here, but damn it, it's going to take us, it's going to take everybody to say enough's enough, that it's time that you do what's right. You put all the BS to the side. We roll up our sleeves. Let's rebuild America. We talk about reclaiming manufacturing and industry. Who would build a car factory or a steel plant or any other high energy type of facility in an area where he says, if it gets cold out, we may not be able to give you any power? Our water pipes are made out of wood, so if they leak, I don't know what we're going to tell you. I mean, think about that. If we want to be first in class, if we want to be a world leader, then damn it, we better put our money and our actions into rebuilding this country's gas, electric, and water infrastructure. Folks, I could tell you story after story. I could stay up here for 2 days, and I know I'm limited on my time. And, I live and breathe this stuff in all aspects of it. And I deal with all the utility companies across the country. And we need to work with them. We need to work within the public service commissions in these states. I'm going to say something that some folks may not like, but some things need to be regulated. Because it's too important to leave it to the open market. Things that are dealing with safety, things that are dealing with if you're going to get poisoned or not by what you drink out of your faucet. I mean, isn't that a real deal, a real issue? Come on. And we're going to leave it up for the highest bidder? God help us all, So I know I'm probably running into my question and answer point in time here. And like I say, there's so much that I left out here that I would like to back up and go on and talk about. You know, the gas industry, you know, God bless them, they're doing everything they can, but there's a lot more that could be done. The water industry, the pipes, the wastewater. I didn't even talk about wastewater. Wastewater, again, is really at an end of its useful life. And that's pretty serious stuff, too. Do we need raw sewage going into Lake Erie out there or the Cuyahoga? It wasn't that long ago. The Cuyahoga was ablaze out there, wasn't it? Do we want to go back to stuff like that? I don't think so. You know, sitting here in this state, there's a lot of opportunity for us. You know, there's a lot of major utilities here. If we could get state people and federal people to say, hey, let's work with these utilities. Let's put boots on the ground. We can put a lot of people to work and do the right things. Again, I know it's the question and answer period. I will turn it over to Harriet. And again, you noticed I brought notes up here. I didn't look at them once because I don't like to read from things, but there's issues that I would love to be able to expand on even more. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you all a paper that we're putting together to explain it in depth, okay?
Today, we are enjoying a Friday forum featuring D. Michael Langford, National President of the Utility Workers Union of America. We're about to head into the Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our radio broadcast, webcast, or our new live simulcast at the Parma Snow branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and our staff will try to work it into the program. Digital production is provided by our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV IdeaStream. Our partnership with IdeaStream is funded by PNC and Robert Conrad, with additional support from Cleveland State University and the Payne Fund. Be sure to join us Friday, February 12th, as we welcome Ann C. Richard, Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, for a conversation on the worldwide refugee crisis and how Americans can help. For more information about our upcoming and past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. Today's forum is sponsored by Dominion, and our community partner is the North Shore AFL-CIO Federation of Labor. We thank you both for your support. Our hospitality partner is the Metropolitan at the 9 Hotel. Additionally, we welcome guests at tables hosted by the Blue-Green Alliance, Dominion, the Utility Workers Union of America, the Utility Workers Union of America Local 270, and Local G55. We thank you all for your support. Now it's time to return to Mr. Langford for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We want to encourage you to make sure your questions are brief and to the point. Holding the microphones today are Marketing and Outreach Fellow Faye Walker and Content Associate Teddy Eisenberg. May we have the first question, please?
Yes, sir. What you said about China was very interesting. Have you thought about setting up sort of an exchange program so that the engineers and workers of other countries like that could come here and learn from us and we can learn from them?
You know, actually, a lot of that is taking place. Again, to changing in technology, it all boils down to dollars and cents. You know, there's a lot of things out there. And, you know, that's where, you know, the world is a wide open place now. And the one thing I didn't mention, and I should have, is we're co-sponsoring a bill out of Texas, a Republican senator who has put forth a bill on carbon capture, where we should be the leaders in carbon capture. The Department of Energy is doing a lot, and they've got some projects going on that has been very successful. And actually, if you think about that technology and sharing it, countries like China and India, we should be the leaders in this technology and selling to them, because we could clean up everything we have over here. We could make this a carbon-free United States. But if India and China and those other types of countries don't follow suit, then what have we done? We've done nothing, right? So when it comes to that technology and that change and creating those million-volt lines and installing those, but we should be leading that technology, but we should also be the leaders in supplying and selling that to these other countries. You know, that's an important piece, an important role.
Pam, who's watching over at the Parma Snow Library, has a question. She says, you mentioned math as one skill future skilled workforce will require. What other skills will be necessary for future utility workers?
Well, you know, when I mention math, because, you know, math plays such a major role in everything that we do. And it's math and science because, you know, we have engineers, we have technicians, we have a wide range of jobs. You know, again, there's the skill levels. Usually, a lot of our apprenticeships, we've created what's called the Power for America Training Fund. It's a multi-employer fund. Our apprenticeship programs now, in some of them, and some of the employers that we work with, not only do the people get a journey person's card at the end of their career, or not the end of their career, this is the starting of their career, right? The end of their educational part, they end up with a degree also. So we're tying at least a minimum of an associate's degree in with that. So, you know, I say math, it's science, it's all your, you know, your basic, that different types of education that needs to come into play here. And that we even promote folks through these training fund to further that education and to other and higher degrees. So, you know, the sky is the limit. You heard me say it before. Continuous learning is our model. You know, we say we're the highest skilled, most productive, safest workforce in the world. And I stand behind that because of the different, diverse type of jobs that we have. We have things from people climbing poles to substations to engineers, technicians, to call centers, and everybody plays a piece to make energy get to your home and get to your home safely.
Thank you for being here. I worked for the City of Cleveland as an engineer for 35 years in street reconstruction. The majority of your facilities, local or distribution, are in public right-of-ways. You'd also have to rebuild the streets. But my question is, how do you intend on paying for this, seeing as how most of the utilities are privately owned?
See, and that's where I said earlier today too, is, you know, even with transitioning, how do we pay for transitioning workers to other types of jobs? You know, I mean, there's got to be a mechanism in place to pay for these things. You know, is it built into the rates? I've really have tried to pursue the fact when it comes to transitioning workers in communities that there be some sort of wires charge. You know, that's the cash register out there. You know, the power going through these lines, if we could have a surcharge on there to help fund these types of activities. But streets, yeah, they have to be rebuilt too, because you tear up a pipeline or an underground cable or any type of water line, somebody's got to put the blacktop or concrete back over top of that. So all that has to come together. And we're also looking at what's called an infrastructure bank, to where you have federal dollars, you have private dollars, you have a different financing mix. And what not better time to finance things when interest rates are basically at nothing, right? I mean, shouldn't we be doing this now compared to when it's 14, 12%? I mean, it just makes good common sense that things could be financed and bonds could be at a very, very low rate. And the return on that dollar investment is unbelievable when it comes to what it could do for greening up, cleaning up this whole environment. I mean, the numbers would be astronomical. I don't know if I really answered your question, but I'm giving you some examples on how it should be dealt with and paid for, you know.
Sir, I appreciate your comments. I'd like you to talk a little more about the electric grid and the distribution system. You mentioned distributed electricity briefly, and you know, we know, as you said, it's coming. If I put solar panels on my house, I got to connect into the electric grid to the power company near me. there seems to be, among the power companies, a fair amount of resistance to that, provides uncertainty about supply or whatever they're concerned about. What are the things that need to happen to have a smarter grid? One of the questions I have, even the grid seems to be sort of this amorphous consortium of ownership and so forth. Should it be more centralized, or should it be even more decentralized? What are the suggestions your union has to making the grid better?
Well, one of the things is investing more into it. You know, it's a different bag because some utilities own power plants, some utilities own transmission and distribution, and some own only transmission. So it's what your focus is and what you put it into. Obviously, distributed generation comes in many forms. Like you said, rooftop solar. It could be a small gas turbine out in the middle of nowhere. It could be a methane type driven off of these waste landfills. I mean, and again, that interconnection without being able to expand that whole transmission system. And there's probably 17,000 new miles of transmission lines in the books to be done over the next 5 years. And literally thousands of miles of new pipes. But getting them permitted and actually happening is going to be a challenge. And you know, we talk about smart grid, we talk about smart meters. You know, that's an easy term to throw around because, you know, you can create all this, but you have to have then smart appliances, right? And you have to have people that actually monitor and do the things with this stuff. You know, I went the other day, I was trying to put, anybody ever heard these Nest thermostats where I could control it from my phone? All right, well, I've got a place in a very rural area where I don't have cable and I can't get regular internet service, so I was gonna get this satellite internet service. Well, they come out and they looked at that and said, nah, that ain't gonna happen. You know, so it just goes to show you, you know, areas, geographic areas plays a big role. But again, it's figuring out ways to work with the utilities and to look at how do we maybe compensate utilities in a different fashion than what's traditionally been done. You know, we always look at this is how we did it and this is how it's got to be done. Well, maybe that's not it. Maybe utilities should make more money by introducing ways for more people to do distributed generation. You know, that's a concept. I mean, it's a lot of things are being talked about. Is there a one size that fits all? No, but it's something that is going to continue to be in the forefront. It's being discussed at all levels, and we have to continue to discuss that. Pardon me, I just, last week was a little bit of a cold, and I'm finally getting over it, but I can see it's resurfacing just a smidge here, so.
Good afternoon. I taught school for many years, and so whenever I hear a speaker, I always try to think of how this can apply to schools and education. And with so much test preparation in schools now, the important curriculum is getting shoved out of the way. So I guess what I want to ask you is, has there been any thought maybe with your public relations team collaborating with national teachers unions, maybe the AFL-CIO, to design a curriculum that really teaches an appreciation for the kind of thing you're talking about, so that maybe you could lobby for the importance of that being included in school curriculum instead of all this test prep?
Well, you know, Kim can vouch for this. We were at a meeting last week and the teachers union was there and they said, you know, we really like those utility workers. And I say that because I've spoke at their events to talk to them about these very same things and how it impacts schools, it impacts children, it impacts everybody. But you're right, you know, we need that curriculum in at an early stage. We're working with community colleges and universities, but we should be doing a deeper dive. We should be going down into the grades and really, you know, showing people that these are good jobs. These are life-supporting jobs. I mean, this is something that, like I said earlier, you can buy a house, you can buy a car, you know, you can pay your taxes, you know. These are things that's the American dream. And let's continue that path, and let's rebuild this industry, and it's changing. I mean, the microscope is on energy, right? The world's focus is on what we're doing and what we're talking about. And this is an opportunity for us to create thousands of good new jobs with different skills, and let's get ahead of that curve. Let's not let the tail wag the dog. Let's us be ahead of that. And, you know, we can talk about trying to create this, create that. This is real stuff that's there in front of us, so why not? Let's do it, you know? It's the old saying, let's just do it, right?
President Langford, I have a question for you. When coal-fired power plants are shutting down and impacting communities, I know the utility workers have been greatly impacted along with other unions as part of the Blue-Green Alliance. But why aren't we hearing about this more nationally? And why isn't there this sense of urgency on the state, the federal level, from the private industry of figuring out a real solution to actually transition people into high-paying jobs where they can sustain a family, to buy a car, to buy a house? And what would you urge people to do?
Well, you know, let me say something about that, you know, and a lot of you remember when the auto crisis hit, and they did the whole issue with shoring up the auto industry. You had three major employers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Impacted workers throughout the country. You look at our industry, hell, we got probably 5 utilities here in this state alone. So it's not like it's one big major, 2 big major employers, because every state, some states, you know, have, they're multi-state, some of the utilities. But it doesn't garner up that support, and they shut a coal plant down in rural America. A lot of people don't ever hear about it, right? But that rural America who's being impacted by it, there's no other jobs like that. So that's why it's up to folks like us in this room to say, hey, look, we have to help there. Because, you know, we may not have 100,000 members under one roof, under one facility, like Ford does or GM does. You know, we have 1,000 here, we have 5,000 there, we have 2,000 over here. And so in our utilities, they're kind of like the best kept secret to some degree out there. You know, people don't realize the types of jobs that they produce and what they have out there. And, you know, we're going back to the school. When, you know, people are trying to get their kids to go on to college. I'll give you an example. Is my 2 sons, Christopher and Kyle. Kyle's the younger one. He's out of high school, got in to become a substation electrician, got a degree during that apprenticeship program. His brother went in to be a doctorate in pharmaceutical. After 4 years into his degree, he looks and says, Dad, you gonna be pissed if I do what? I'd like to start doing what Kyle's doing, because he's delivering pizzas and Kyle's buying homes and trucks, you know? So again, it's that quality of jobs, and we need to expand on that. And venues like this gives us an opportunity to talk about it and to say, hey, look, we need to help those communities. These lakeshore communities here lost 3 big power plants. Other parts of Ohio with AEP, they've shut down plants, but you haven't heard a lot about it, like you're saying, Kim. And we have to make that a focal point. And again, it goes back to, you know, addressing the politicians, and let's switch those folks into rebuilding these systems rather than laying them off. God bless, we didn't lose anybody with the First Energy, with the plant closings there, but that's not a guarantee that that's going to continue, you know.
Mike, I want to thank you for presenting such a compelling view of a big picture of the relation of energy and the environment and employment. The more I think about it, the more I see the enormity of the problem and the challenge and the opportunity. It's so enormous that there should be a cabinet-level Department of Infrastructure. You know, in the various debates, the Republicans can care less, but even in the Democratic debates, there was no real mention of infrastructure and all that that means. What are you doing with the utility workers and with partner organizations to really bring the enormity of that big picture to the American people so they can demand action on that?
And you know, and I'd mentioned earlier too, is in 2013, we started that campaign with Blue-Green Alliance, You know, environmental partners, Sierra Club's part of that. The steel workers are a part of it. Auto workers are a part of it. We're starting to finally get a coalition together, and that's where I mentioned I went with the teachers union even too, because to let them know how that impacts them. And they've jumped on board. They passed a resolution to help on to discuss this whole energy infrastructure situation. We have to highlight it. We have to continue. I agree with what you're saying. It should be front and center on everybody's mind because it is enormous, and there is so much could be gained on this that if we keep talking about it and just keep pushing it down the road, I mean, if we're rated at a D plus, a D minus, and a D, I mean, come on. If your kids or grandkids came home with those grades, wouldn't you be appalled at that? I mean, it's like, come on, folks. But it's all right for our infrastructure on the necessities of life to be along those lines? I get flabbergasted, okay? But we're doing everything we can, and we've done a lot in the last year and a half. But these catastrophic situations are helping us, you know, Superstorm Sandy, the Flint water situation. I don't think I mentioned that out in California, in the LA area, that Aliso Canyon. You know, there's a pipeline that's ruptured 2 miles under the ground that's spewing methane there now, and they've had to evacuate 4,400 people out there, you know. And that methane, I mean, all of what California is doing on the clean energy, it's all kind of taking a back seat because of the amount of methane that's going up into the sky. And here, you know, we've been able to pass legislation, but again, you have to repair this stuff. You have to put a proactive maintenance type programs in, and, you know, to make sure that these pipes underground, because hell, they've been buried. That pipe, there was a pipe that burst in Harlem, New York, burnt down an apartment building. The pipe was 127 years old. You know, the paperwork, the maps, on pipelines in this country is really bad. It's really, really bad.
Mr. Langford, it seems to me that your message is very clear here, and that is we need a substantial increase in public spending in repair of our infrastructure. It's also pretty obvious that we're well into the political season, unless I'm mistaken. What have you and your union done to make this an issue, to present this issue to our political parties and candidates, and what has been their response to your efforts? I would encourage you not to be shy. You're here in the City Club of Cleveland.
Oh boy. No, we have reached out to the different campaigns, and we've invited them to come speak at events of ours and to hear what we have to say. We have encouraged them. Several of the campaigns are taking a very proactive and are actually making promises during their campaign speeches about what they want to do with clean energy and infrastructure rebuilds. Others don't want to give you the time of day because, again, it's a money issue. It's like run it till it breaks, burn it down, and we'll deal with it then. You know, I go back to the science. A lot of people are science deniers, but, you know, the facts are real. This isn't something that Mike Langford's making up, folks. This is real stuff. But you're right. The politicians, we're laying it out to them, saying, look, this needs to be front and center. And the Blue-Green Alliance and others are helping us with that messaging. But it's going to take more than us. It's going to take people that are impacted by these systems, which is everybody in this country is touched by gas, electric, and water in one way or another. And again, by us being able to speak and educate, that's our goal here, is to continue to educate. Because I think if we can educate enough people to say, enough's enough, damn it, we're going to fix this problem, then that's when we'll see a real deal. Because I don't care who's president. They can say we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then Congress is going to say, yeah, who are you? You know, I mean, that's been proven, right? It's been proven.
I'm with the Service Employees International Union Local 1, and when we as the labor movement represent a scant 6% of the private sector, how do we ensure that, assuming the funding and the developments needed to improve and replace and rebuild their infrastructure are put in place. How do we as a labor movement work together to ensure that these new jobs and expanded jobs stay union and stay good jobs?
Well, I think that what I said earlier is, you know, you look at infrastructure and what we're talking about, we have to make sure our own infrastructure is in order too, right? That's where we're putting the emphasis on skills and training and education. You know, we want to show folks that the best qualified person to do this work is people that are going through our training, you know, that there's no second guessing of what you're getting, that you're getting a highly skilled professional worker out there. So that's what we're doing to guarantee that we're going to stay and we're going to be 20, 50, 100 years from now, hey, we're going to be on top of the game because we're supplying that workforce of highly skilled people and a diverse workforce, bringing in women and men and people of color and just educating. And, you know, my goal and my saying is that, hey, you know, let's build within. Our strength is within amongst all of us. And what not a better place is to garner all that strength from who we are and what we do and what we do every day. So that's what we're doing, you know. And I suggest all unions do that.
Today at the City Club, we have been enjoying a Friday forum with D. Michael Langford, National President of the Utility Workers Union of America, AFL-CIO. Thank you, Mr. Langford. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. This forum is now adjourned.